Hey guys, today I wanted to do a guide on how to maximize your Void Boss damage. Now, the Void Boss rewards are pretty good. If you can get within like top 5, you get a couple of free Void chests, and those are always a free chance at great stuff, so hopefully this helps you. The Void Boss fight is basically split up into two sections. The first section is your first fight that has all the runes. The boss is still in a very weak form, and you're trying to do as much damage as possible. And the second phase is basically all of the fights after that, because this is kind of treated as an endurance battle. He gets stronger and stronger, and you just try to last as long as you can. So I'm going to start with going into the first fight with the heroes, artifacts, and all of that. And then I'll go into the runes, and then I will go into what heroes are what you want to for all the repeated battles after that. So let's start with the first team that you want to use. Now, the top heroes for Void, hands down, are going to be these three: Arwen, Saizo, Detlaf. Arwen is single-handedly the best boss hero in the game. She's easily twice as good as Saizo or Detlaf, if not more. So if you are looking to build her to maximize damage for Void Boss, she also helps on Friends Boss, on Guilds Boss, and she can do some pretty good work in Den Planet Trial if built right. So she's absolutely worth building if you want to push some PvE. The other two, well, they're useful, but they're not that great. You will want at least one, maybe two of these damage dealers on your team, and you're going to build the entire team around them. Everything is based on having them do the single biggest hits you can possibly do. But let's also follow that with heroes that are bad at Void, which is basically the heroes that are built to do full team damage and not single target damage. So Kurt is not good as a damage dealer here. Brynn is not really all that good because her whole thing is getting hurt and healing. And because this boss reduces your healing to 0, Brynn just doesn't do that great. Heroes like Ultima, which are designed to buff your team and go for a speed fight, are not going to be all that great here as well. So again, you're going to want at least one or two of these three heroes. You're going to want to buff them as much as possible. Use heroes like Verthandi, Phoenix, Vegvisir, Skuld, Kurt, whatever you can to support them and buff their damage as high as possible. Next, we're going to go into artifacts. Now, the artifacts, one thing you have to note is that you do not want energy on your first battle. This is because the final battle that you fight before him, which has the dark enemies, it fills your energy to maximum, and because this is an endurance battle and the energy carries over, you pretty much don't need energy artifacts at all. So, the ones that you're going to want, this is the #1 artifact for Void. There has been confusion on how this works. New players don't really understand how to read this, and the way that this works is the hero that equips this does 88% extra damage to warriors. Not other way around, not better equipped by a warrior, none of that. It's only the person wearing it. This is very rare. It's almost impossible to pull out of shards, so the best place you can get it is from moonstones. So if you feel that you have enough star shards on hand, it's not so bad to invest in one of these if possible. The other option is, if you don't have that, you can use the lower version, which is Satan's Power. Not nearly as good, but it's still better than a generic attack artifact or whatnot. This is still going to be very good for this boss battle. Lastly, because you don't really need Ragnarok, the boss only has a good 20 defense, Gaia Bulga turns out to be slightly better for that purpose. So those are going to be the artifacts you really want on all your damage dealers. Everyone else can just have HP or speed or whatever it is. The support heroes is not as important. You can always put attack artifacts on them to maybe squeeze out a little bit of extra damage of the first fight, but that's up to you. It's not a major factor. Next, I'm going to go into the runes. Now, I originally recorded this with a bunch of them equipped, but since something happened to my video and it messed up, I had to take pictures of the runes, and so we'll start over with that. So the #1 rune that you're going to look for is absolutely this one. This is Elemental Force. The reason that this one is so huge is because if the boss is bleeding, burning, and poisoned at the same time, this all stack and you get 135% extra damage. How do you maximize that? Here are the heroes that you do this. And so these are going to be the heroes that you will absolutely want to build your team around for the first fight on top of your damage dealer. For burning, Phoenix burns on his regular hit, he burns on his skill. Yig only burns when he gets hit, so not as useful, but still good. For bleed, you've got Mulan, who bleeds on her regular attack and her skill. You've got Chesia, who bleeds on her skill, and Bale bleeds on his skill and his regular attack. For poison, you pretty much just want an elf, any elf, because their T3 lets you have it so that when they land a critical hit, you will poison them. And if you have Arwen, who always sits at 100% crit rate, you're pretty much always going to have him poisoned. Ripper and Scarlet and whatever else. And also for bleed, there's Aiden, but he's not that good anyway. The one thing to note is, now because of this boss, the way he works is he dies and revives constantly, and every time you fight him, he gets stronger and stronger. When he dies and revives, he wipes all of this. Burn, bleed, poison, and anything else you've got on him, he wipes it. So you actually really need heroes that can re-land debuffs on him non-stop. And so that's why you have to build the team around it. There is a rune that puts a burn or bleed or poison on him at the beginning of the fight and lasts for 15 rounds, but because of the way it works, the moment he dies, he loses it, so those runes are not good. This is your single best rune to look for, period. If you can get this, this is your key to doing major damage on at least your first fight. Next, we're going to go into all the secondary runes that are like useful. None of them have the same impact as Elemental Force, but they're still good. Next one is going to be Hawkeye. Now, this one was originally worded to say it upped hit rate by 70%, but that was incorrect. It's actually crit rate. Now, Arwen doesn't really need crit rate because, again, she sits at 100% crit, but if you're using Saizo, Detlaf, or trying to make the best of it with other assassins, you may want this one a lot more. Plus, every time they crit, they do 5% of his HP, so, you know, not so bad. This one's a very nice little buff to add to your damage. Next, we're going to add this one, which is attack by 40%. It's good to have. It's just a nice, decent buff to add to your damage. Next, we're going to have Fatal Strike, which is crit damage 100%. This is great. Because you're trying to crit all the time, this is absolutely a humongous buff to damage, so this is another good one. Last would be Defense Break. Defense Break by 20. This would mean that you don't even need Gaia Bolga at all because everyone already lands their maximum damage, but you know, every little bit helps. Whatever you can get, whatever you can equip. Gaia Bolga does come with 13% attack, so that's not bad either. So once you get past these 5, you can get into the secondary level of runes, the ones that are not as good. I don't have pictures of all of them, but another one is this one, the Warrior Buster. This is the level 1 version. There is a level 2 version that gives you 25%, but I don't believe it has a level 3, at least I've never seen one. So adding 25% extra damage to warriors is pretty solid. It's not going to be as good as the top runes, but this is a nice filler if you just can't get them, because that happens sometimes. And lastly is going to be a set of 3 runes. These are the Nova runes. So there's one of these for poison, for bleed, for burn. They stack. If you have all 3, you can get an extra 90% damage. But again, you'd really only care about having one of them as a filler, and hopefully at least your other 3 runes are really great. So those are going to be your biggest source of damage. So those are the top runes that you should be looking for on your way up. I find that the more battles you fight to get them is better for getting runes rather than skipping battles with all the question mark blocks. But, you know, if you're not strong enough to get through all the battles reliably, then do what you can do. But these will be the best to choose from. So that should be the basis for your first team. You're going to hopefully have Elemental, Hawkeye, crit damage, and maybe attack or defense break. You're going to have a huge damage dealing assassin like Arwen. You're going to, if you have Elemental Force, or If one of his weekly buffs is something like this one, which is extra damage while bleeding, then you're going to want to keep one of the bleed, burn, poison heroes on your team alongside it, and then everything else is just support. So that will be your first hit. Again, that's your biggest hit, and everything after that is kind of just gravy. But here's kind of how this works. Because he gets stronger, at some point he will one-shot your entire team with his skill. Maybe the 4th or 5th battle, maybe a little bit later. So how do we control that, and how do we keep doing damage to him? The best way is by denying him energy. That's really the only thing you can do. He is immune to petrify, silence, freeze, all of those. He's completely immune. So basically energy denial is the only way to do it. How do you deny him energy? Well, you have to stop him gaining energy from his attacks. You have to stop you giving him energy when you attack. So here are the best heroes for this. The dodge tanks, you're going to want a really high dodge tank. These are the two best. Mulan caps at 90% dodge. Ripper caps at 80 after he fires. So Ripper is one of those that really struggles to do anything until he fires. And on repeated battles, because you can't force Ripper to have energy at the beginning of every battle, he's not quite as good for this mode, but he's an option if you don't have anyone better. Energy control, we have Sigurd. Starting at 5 stars, he already has a 60% chance to drain the boss's energy to 0. But at, I believe, 6 or 10 stars, it goes up to 100%. So that is lovely. You can stop him from firing immediately. Chessia, when she fires, the boss stops gaining energy from your hits. So if you pair Chessia and Mulan, Mulan means he doesn't gain energy from his hits. Chessia means he doesn't gain energy from your hits. Those are two really good pair. And then to add on to that, you add a few more heroes to control his energy some more. So Sigurd, like that. And also Werewolf drains energy on his regular hit, but not his skill. So if you get a loner Werewolf, he's pretty useful. You'd be surprised. Damage, not so much. Freya, she has a chance to drain energy on her skill, so very, very luck related, but if you're absolutely desperate, she's just something that you can look at to work with. So you're going to build your team with those, with some support, and with your damage dealer, and you'll just fight over and over and over and hope that he doesn't kill you. Some things you have to look out for. Because it's an endurance battle, you cannot control who has energy at the start of the battle. It's hard to stop his first skill, so you're just kind of... That's where Arwen comes in handy to weaken him and make sure his first skill doesn't hurt as much as it could. And because healing is 0, you can't really do anything. However, someone like Watchman, whose shield does not count as healing, is very, very good for this. Now, I've shown my own versions of whatever teams for this, and they fight about 8 times in a row without dying. That varies very greatly depending on what the boss's skills are, depending how lucky I am. Because Mulan only has 90% dodge and not 100, there is always a 10% chance that he will hit and gain energy, and then fire skill, and then kill me. So the best you can do is throw as much luck as you can in your side of the field, and hopefully control his energy to keep fighting. So that should be all you need. Hopefully this helps you choose which heroes are good for this. Hopefully it helps you pick among the loner heroes that they give you, the one at the start, 1 or 2 in the middle of the battle. And hopefully it helps you get a little bit more damage, because the rewards are just not bad. Free void points is always great because it's a great extra source of flags, and who knows, or you all know, we need flags. We need flags desperately. That is all for this time. See you guys next time.